So Sabo versus Fujitora. Now, this fight in all of Dressrosa really is super misunderstood, especially coming from Fujitora's perspective. It seems that that's a common theme for admirals, but Fujitora specifically is a very nuanced character. And you have a situation where Oda, when he writes for the admirals, yes, they're extremely powerful, but we've seen a theme now where there is much more than just fights that matter for Oda. He's writing a story and explaining their character, explaining their motivation, explaining their personalities through the arcs that they are in. So with Fujitora in this arc, a lot of people miss the clear details and clear portrayal of what Oda is getting across with Fujitora. One thing I want to make mention of is that out of all the skirmishes that took place for Fujitora throughout all of Dressrosa, whether it be Luffy, Zoro, Law, Doflamingo, Sabo, he never gets hit one time. Never once. Now, let's break it down with Sabo and Fujitora. This starts at the end of chapter 750, and we start getting this dialogue where Fujitora doesn't disclose his plans. He doesn't give a shit about ego or what he looks like to other people. He only cares about doing what he feels is right. So when Sabo comes down, he says, and I can't convince you to step aside and let us pass, as Sabo stands in front of them. Sabo says, well, that depends. See, I can't let anyone pass who intends harm to the Straw Hat Pirates or those who are helping him. And Fuji says, is it the Revolutionary Army's job to support pirates? Inquiring about this doesn't make much sense. And Sabo says, yes, that's right. As a revolutionary, I forbid you to pass. No, I take that back. As a brother, I forbid you to pass. So Fujitora got what he wanted. He got the details because it doesn't make any sense for revolutionaries to move like this to defend pirates. It's not what they do. It's not even in Dragon's character, which we get to see furthermore. And he says, oh ho, and whose brother might you be? So obviously I think he already kind of gets the gist of who he is. But then you start to see Sabo take on some of the fodder marines, including Bastille, who he takes out with the Dragon Claw attack, cuts through his sword, and then has the cool line about he can crush a human skull as easily as an egg. Also, cool little Easter egg, when Sabo mentions his Dragon Claw, we actually get the image of a dragon that greatly resembles Kaido. So that seems like it was some foreshadowing for Kaido's form in the future. And then you see that Fujitora is going to casually drop a meteor. We understand that this is super casual, as he did the same thing with Law, where he literally says that, oh, it was just a test. Also at the end of the arc, when he lifts up all the rubble at the end, when the Straw Hats are in peril, and that's when like Luffy tries fighting him, he implies that lifting up all the rubble is like more dangerous than the meteor. It's a higher difficulty test, so to speak, and whilst holding up all this rubble in air, he can casually get off his attacks like Raging Tiger and has no complications fighting. It kind of works something similar to like Kaido holding up the island when he fights. It's not something that's straining or difficult. It's literally just like a jab, so to speak, in a boxing match. It seems that he was going to test Sabo here the same way he was going to test Law. The birdcage ends up cutting through it because obviously it was encompassing the whole thing, and ends up having this widespread AoE effect where it crashes into some buildings, and Fujitora says, oh shucks, didn't mean to be so widespread, hope I didn't hurt no civilians. And this kind of plays into Fujitora's whole aspect of like trying to play the clumsy old man. Like things aren't all planned out from him when he is one of the most cunning characters we've actually seen, where everything kind of falls in line according to his plan. Obviously all this kind of stuff gets revealed later, but you get the same kind of dialogue when he uses some kind of attack on Law that has a pretty wide ranging effect, and Doflamingo highlights, oh, you really don't hold back, do you? And he basically calls himself a Lamox. It's very clear what Fujitora does the entirety of this arc, and here's another example. The point of this is he wants to make it look like he was trying to get past Sabo, and we're going to get through this in a minute. So he says to Sabo, are you aware of the standing you're in? Sabo then grabs Bastille's mask and says, I'm not used to these powers yet, I keep dodging everything. And he crushes the mask. I seem to recall the previous owner of the Flame Fruit, Fire Fist Ace, died in the Paramount War. Being described as a sworn brother to Straw Hat, now you claim that same title, says Fujitora. Sabo gives the story about the Sake cups were linked by a bond that can't be severed. Keep in mind, if Luffy ever asks for help, I will race this side wherever he is, no matter my position. And Fujitora is like kind of watching Sabo, seeing how he's going to react to everything. Clearly sees his resolve here as he remembers the Ace news being reported to him in the newspaper. Fujitora says, seems there's no asking further then. Sabo says, you're not interested anyway, are you? Fujitora says, well, I've got no drinks for us to shoot the breeze over, and they have like a little clash where Fujitora blocks with the exact same posture that he was using to block Zoro's attacks, and block really all the attacks just casually. just casually reacts to Sabo's attack with his weapon, and then we cut away. Now Sabo misinterpreted that because Fujitora really doesn't actually intend to beat him in any moment. So as we push past further, we keep getting random cutaways. Flames have kind of engulfed the pathway. It seems that Fujitora was kind of dictating where they were fighting. So now the Marines can't go after the Straw Hats. And Fujitora says, "Strange fella, ain't ya? Isn't your aim here to stop the Navy?" And Sabo finally starts catching on. He's like, "How long are you going to play dumb?" Fujitora says, "Well, shucks, I figured you might spare some sympathy for a poor blind old man." And Sabo says, "I don't discriminate," which is so funny. But you can see here that Sabo, during this off-screen period of time, has taken damage, where you can see he's marked up pretty much all over his face. Meanwhile, of course, Fujitora has no damage, which indicates obviously he didn't get hit with anything. And it's pretty interesting because obviously Sabo's using flames the whole time. So Fujitora says, "Now you gone and scared me. Guess you ain't the number 2 of the revolutionaries for nothing." So kind of just like that troll in nature. So people call Kizaru the troll, but Fujitora actually really trolls people in like a more refined way. He's more classy with his trolling. But I got my own stand-in to uphold, so no hard feelings. And he's very publicly like saying these kind of things. And he uses Gravity Blade. Now Gravity Blade looks like advanced conch to me. Obviously I don't think it is, but just like the way that they draw it here is so weird. As the lightning coming off of it, it's probably just some gravity effect, because obviously advanced conch wasn't a thing at this point as far as illustration. He uses this Raging Tiger attack, the sideways gravity. It's weird because if it was used in hockey, it should have affected Sabo, but it seems that Sabo just like flows with the fire and the wind, goes in and then tries to clash with Fujitora again. And then here's the most important piece of dialogue. Sabo is thinking this whole time, what is he thinking? He's obviously understanding how powerful Fujitora has been. He's understanding that he's not actually landing any attacks. And he's seeing that Fujitora is really just kind of like almost stalling. And he's like, what is he plotting? And then you finally get this dialogue from Fujitora, which is really, really telling. And I think this goes over a lot of people's head. He says, "Whether I roll snake eyes or boxcars, I'm fitting to wager my life here. And there ain't no point to the roll if you lose the dice beforehand." What are the dice? The dice are Luffy and actually Doflamingo. Because the situation that we have had established to us this entire time was that Fujitora was caught by surprise at the fact that Doflamingo was still warlord on Dressrosa. He got the call from Sakazuki, and then he kind of just started to observe things from there, and then had the moment with Doflamingo where he straight up told him to his face, "I want the warlords disbanded, but I'm not going to obviously take you out here. It's not my place to do so. Does the world government think themselves to be gods?" In fact, it's outright stated verbatim in his interaction with Riku later that yes, he could have taken down Doflamingo, but it was never going to happen that way because he needed the spectacle. He needed the people to see the truth. He needed to gamble it all on that for the Straw Hats, the Alliance, to do the fighting. Because how could a man who let pirates run wild on innocent folks turn his blade on a warlord of the sea and then act as though he dispenses justice? The people need to see that world government can be corrupt. The people need to see that this warlord system is a fail for the Navy. We have failed as an organization to the people. He talked about a pirate tried to take hold of a major land and it would have been in ruin just like Dressrosa, which is a direct reference to Crocodile and Alabasta, which he got this intel from Smoker, who actually gave him insight about Straw Hat's character and about the fact that Straw Hat actually saved Alabasta from this guy. So now he sees that exact same thing transpiring here in Dressrosa with Doflamingo, only this time is the finished product. So this reinforces that he already has heard good things about Luffy to believe in him. He has seen what one of these warlords can do. He has seen Doflamingo earlier in the arc explaining to Law about his heritage, about how there was a big ruse and how the world government's behind him. It's a big spiral of corruption where he is getting away scot-free with things that should not be happening. And this whole thing essentially goes exactly according to plan for Fujitora, which was a major gamble, but it paid off here. And he righted the wrongs that Smoker could not in Alabasta. It all was full circle, and it's a beautiful moment, especially when you consider everything that he's truly putting on the line. That's why he says he's wagering his life here, because if anybody gets the inkling that he's being a traitor to the world government, that he is aiding a pirate, allowing the Navy to lose face, purposefully, that he is actively orchestrating all these events from the shadows, so it directly leads to shame on the Navy, shame on the world government, shame to the warlord system. That he did all that without a shadow of a doubt, he can be executed, lose his life, lose his position, everything. And that's why this guy is a stud, bro. If you don't think that this guy's a leading candidate for Conqueror's Haki with these kind of convictions, I don't know what to tell you. And right at this moment is when he discloses that information to Sabo, or Sabo picks up on it, and Fuji says, we're actually birds of a feather here. The Navy can't be the hero of this country. It ain't our place. And Sabo says, if anyone finds out what you're thinking, ... furthermore talking about him wagering his life, he's gonna be in trouble. Fuji says, all they'll see is that I couldn't get past you. That's all Fujitora wanted the people to see. He wanted people to believe that he really tried to get past Sabo. He really tried to go apprehend Luffy, but he was thwarted by the number 2 of the revolutionaries, right? That's what he wants. That's why you see with the Law instance, he very subtly allows Law to go. He notices that the ship was close by. He noticed that it was close by as he sensed it. He could sense the distortions of the clouds. He could sense everything that was going on. And then he decided to let up his gravity, giving Law that moment of escape, and then doesn't lay chase, right? Then he goes back to eating and he's like, okay, he's seeing how things play out because he obviously heard Doflamingo's speech. He got the intel about Doflamingo being a celestial dragon. He got everything he wanted to know. He sees the corruption firsthand, and he is orchestrating all this to a whim without trying to make it too obvious. And that's the end of Sabo and Fujitora. But I further want to get into the birdcage instance with Fujitora because it's misinterpreted as well. But as the birdcage is closing in, Fujitora sits. He sits and patiently observes. He does not spring into action. He never gets panicked by what's happening. He notices the parasite, he notices the birdcage, but he's betting on Straw. He needs Straw Hat to get this win. And then when they're talking about just a few more minutes for Luffy's Garrett to come back, ensure that not a single person is crushed by the shrinking country, Fujitora then is kind of like, okay, now it's getting a little dicey here. He starts to get up, and that's when Fujitora goes and kind of helps with the birdcage. And he just uses armament haki. He does it very subtly. He doesn't use his gravitational powers to aid. He just uses his armament. Walks up, very calm still, but he's like, all right, I'm still waiting on this bet. Broadcasting, they need to just wait a little bit longer for Luffy's timer to reset. And Zoro says, what are you doing here? What the hell are you doing here? And he's like, well, I may not be able to discern your face with my eyesight, but I ain't one to stand by while fools struggle at their task. Though my power might be slight, I pledge it to your cause. So again, downplaying himself because he does not want to be seen as the hero here. If he comes out here and just explodes with gravitational fucking force and just repels the birdcage or puts it to an exact halt, it completely undermines Luffy saving the country, because the country will have been saved by Fujitora. Yes, Doflamingo could be defeated by Luffy, but the birdcage needs to be stopped as a result of Doflamingo's defeat. So he is not going to just stop it. Yes, he goes over there with armament haki, but he's doing so very subtly. I'm sure he was putting in a little bit more force as it went on to just kind of like make sure that he's buying a little bit extra time, but he's obviously observing everything that's happening as well. And what you see is that as everybody else is struggling to stop the cage, when it finally gets stopped, Zoro screams just one more heave, and everybody falls forward. Kinemon, Kanjuro, Zoro, they all fall forward. Everybody that was pushing against the edge of the birdcage, they have no idea that the birdcage is actually got to be stopped. And Fujitora, he just stands very firm in place. Further reinforcing what I was just talking about him knowing things were ending. So he sensed that the end was at that point. He wasn't putting force behind his push to where he would fall forward. He's putting the most minimalistic amount behind it, and he simply stands in place. And that basically wraps it all up. So don't ever let anybody tell you that Fujitora can't stop the birdcage, or that he's fucking weaker than Doflamingo or some bullshit, or that Sabo actually scales to Fuji, because Sabo doesn't actually scale to Fuji here. And yes, in fairness, Sabo is probably maybe even a lot stronger now than what he was then. He had just got the fruit that day. Right? He had just learned the powers. He even mentioned it himself. He was still dodging because he wasn't used to the Logia abilities, which I don't even know if is a bad thing. But the point of it is, in that fight, Fujitora did the absolute bare minimum while fighting him, while trying to uphold an appearance, making it look as if he was putting in and exerting some effort behind it, while avoiding all of Sabo's attacks, only being the one to damage him, albeit I doubt anything was meant to be super serious. And then basically sun Sabo to a point where Sabo understands, damn, this guy is plotting something because I can't fucking touch this man. And then he's like, yeah, this is my plan. And Sabo just goes along with the plan. Obviously it was aligned with his interests, but he thinks back to that and understands like, damn, this guy's fucking a beast. Same thing happens with the Zoro shit, just casually blocks the attack. Same thing happens with Luffy later, as obviously you see for the first time, like some shreds of what Fujitora can actually do at the end of the war, where he basically just summons all the rubble up and he could crush all the fleets that were leaving Dressrosa if he wanted to. But yes, Dressrosa, it's not everybody's cup of tea as for a Fujitora fan, and honestly, when I first watched it, I also wasn't the biggest Fujitora fan, but over time, when you reread things and you really understand the nuance and the context behind Fujitora, he's one of the most well-written characters in One Piece. And as an admiral, he is super interesting because we haven't even seen, in my opinion, we haven't even scratched the surface of what he's capable of. And if you really understand what you're reading in Dressrosa, he looks like a stud. Accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish, orchestrated everything to a T, all while making it look as if it was all an organic buildup where Straw Hat defeated Doflamingo. The Navy can take it on the chin, and he still got away with his life and still got away with his title as Admiral, albeit a scolding from Sakazuki. He is truly a great character, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And yes, at that point, I do think that it's essentially a low diff fight for Fujitora over Sabo at that point. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.